Well, Phil, let me put it this way.
Yeah.
There are ways that you don't want to go down early in an Open Cup match. And I think one of the top things on that list is getting scored on by an eighth grader.
Go on.
So Chattanooga FC of MLS Next Pro was playing Kalonji Pro Profile, which is I guess you would say, the top end team that is part of the Kalonji Soccer Academy.
Two pros in their names, so you know they're good.
They got pro in their name, so you know they're good. They got a coach, owner, last name Kalonji, multiple players, last name Kalonji. One of them, Braden Kalonji, made history as now the youngest goal scorer in an Open Cup match at the age of 14, scoring off of the deflection of a free kick. Great story for that kid. Absolute scenes and exactly what you want from Open Cup. And I would actually urge people to look up Kalonji Pro Profile because I think their story is great. I had no idea they existed, and all it took was a 14-year-old scoring. Did anything else interesting happen in Open Cup play this week, Phil?
Oh, boy. Yeah. Well, El Farolito, who was at one time the feel-good story of Open Cup for their knack of upsetting teams and also representing a Mission District in San Francisco burrito restaurant. They played Sacramento Republic on Wednesday. They got that match to a scoreless draw at the end of regulation. And then in extra time, things kind of fell apart a little bit. Sacramento went up 2-0. Mark Anthony Kay, if you wondered where he was, is now a Sacramento Republic player and taunted the El Farolito bench apparently after that second goal, which was deep into stoppage time and of course kind of sealed the fate of everything. And then that match had 13 yellow cards and 3 red cards, and the 3 red cards happened all after that incident. And again, just we'll link to the Mission Local story in this, but some kind of uncouth fan behavior. Apparently, the son of one of the El Farolito players, a 3-year-old, got kicked in the nads by a fan who then disappeared into the crowd, which, again, people were wondering why El Farolito players went into the stands after Republic fans after that match. And that seems like that would be kind of a good reason why. And just absolutely, absolutely chaotic. And of course, Devin and Mike were on the call for that one. So if you need a guiding hand through the Open Cup weirdness that game was, there's certainly that. And they, in all of this, called out the DJ for being on a heater because the DJ, in an effort to calm things down, starting with the kind of on-field melee that was happening right before the red cards were to be doled out, played in succession Why Can't We Be Friends by War, One Love by Bob Marley, and Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, which is not exactly a song about calming down, but I guess applies in the moment.
It's something that deserves a fair amount of praise for just the attempt. You don't win every DJ set, but you lose 100% of them that you don't try to throw in some Bob Marley.
Right. On Wednesday night, a DJ saved not my life necessarily, but further chaos. Anyone get the reference?
Well, yeah, I'm not West Coast enough, Phil. That's something we got to work on. We're 100 episodes in now. We've got to be better at these reference catches.
Emergency podcast. They did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, hell yeah, shut up, hell yeah, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast, where we talk about all the Austin FC emergencies. Of course, tonight's emergency here on Saturday morning as we record being that LAFC is coming to town. They have not let in a single goal yet in 4 regular season games. Law of averages and just the MLS of it all says that maybe that's going to happen tonight. We shall see. Moises, how are you doing? And wait, did we miss an anniversary in here?
Well, it's sort of, kind of, not really an anniversary. I mean, we're going to get the real sickos on us for calling things the wrong thing. Maybe a landmark, technically speaking. Yes, we realized after our most recent episode, wait a minute, we've done 100. And I say we, I haven't been on every single one. I've been on most of them. You've been on all of them, but including the pilot and including the emergency tangents, last episode was the 100th episode in the feed. So we deserve some sort of acclaim. We thought we were charging toward 100, and in fact, we are charging past 100. So congratulations to us, the real heroes, the undeniable kings of podcasting. Here we are, over 100 episodes in, and it doesn't even matter to us, to the point that we didn't even mention it when it happened. Now we're just referring to it having happened due to the rules governing such things. We just have to. I don't know, Phil.
That said, by the official count, it's episode 97. So we've got 3 episodes to plan something special for the quote unquote actual 100th episode.
Oh, good. Yes. Planning more. That's exactly what we need. That won't be stressful at all.
We also need to do a tangent here pretty soon.
We do. And we have an international break next week, which is the perfect time for it. But speaking of important, daunting things, this match against LAFC, got to be honest, Phil, I've been seeing a lot of doomsaying all week. We're keeping this one quick. We're going to bring it in high and tight so that this thing can get turned around as we record this on Saturday morning. You posted 3 questions, and I think jumping right to expectations for this match, something else that I did this week was I went, as I recommended, to the AFS Cinema screening of Summer of '94, the doc about the U.S. World Cup in 1994, primarily the U.S. team. It mostly focuses on the camp leading up to the World Cup. There are people who saw it who complained that it didn't just deal with the events of the World Cup itself. To me, that would have been way less interesting. I think the tack they took with the archival footage, a lot of which people have never seen outside of Alexi Lawless's closet, way more interesting. Some really fascinating insight. Well worth a watch. I want to broadcast on Fox in May, and it made me think of something, Phil.
I missed it, by the way, because it was D&D night.
Look,
my Elven Ranger survived an ambush.
You've got important things that you got to do. I did not have as many important things to do. I got a free VIP ticket for a nearly empty theater. Let me brag while I can. But watching it made me think of something. When things rolled around to, spoiler alert for over 30 years ago, the U.S.'s shock victory over Colombia, which nobody thought was going to happen. Nobody in their right mind believed that the U.S. was going to upset Colombia, even though they were a host country. And I feel like there are similar vibes around this Austin LAFC match because of recent form, because of recent losses, because of injuries, people who aren't available. And I think this is exactly the kind of traditional doubting them that Austin FC thrives on. Home field advantage, an interest that we have seen already this season in provoking the opponent early, going hard at them early, launching some pretty strong counters. I feel like we're in for something interesting and special. I don't see Austin FC showing up to roll over the way that I think, to me, strangely, some people have posed it as, oh, well, there's no way. I mean, even without Bouanga, Sonny is just going to have a field day at Q2. I don't see that happening. As you pointed to, the law of averages tilts in Austin's favor, even if various of the stats, even if betting odds may not. I think there's some intangibles at work here.
Yeah. If you are trying to bet on a home team, if betting is something that you can do, which of course legally, technically you can't in Texas, although prediction markets maybe have changed those sorts of things, you should know that Austin FC is the kind of least likely to win of all the home teams. So if you are believing that a win is due and you believe that there's a little bit of a comeuppance for LAFC after 4 straight clean sheets, then maybe that is something that you are interested in. But I do want to point out, so talk to Josh Gross, who is an excellent writer over at the LA Daily News, covers LAFC, and talk to him a little bit about the match coming up. And I thought notable the transition being seamless in coaches between Cherundolo and Dos Santos. Again, that is something that kind of wondered about when Cherundolo announced last year that he was going to step down, wondered who that coach was going to be, and they pulled from within. Of course, Dos Santos does have some head coaching experience back when he was with Vancouver. That did not go spectacularly well, but things are going pretty well so far in this particular era. But I did ask about conceding and when that might happen. And he said, in terms of their conceding and the likelihood that they're going to happen, he says most likely offset pieces where they appear beatable, especially if smallish midfielders are tasked with marking in the box. And that to me seems like a glimmer of hope right there, because one thing that Austin has shown that they are able to do this year, particularly with Facundo Torres pulling the strings on free kicks and corner kicks, is they have been able to engineer some chances in the box that on set pieces could lead to goals. And we saw it happen against Charlotte. We saw that happen in the opener 8 minutes into the season. So it is something they're capable of doing. It is something they can do. Again, it's a way to score. It's a way to take advantage of some of the strengths that Austin FC has. They do have height with their center backs. They do have someone in Torres who can deliver a really good ball in. They seem to be doing well in that. We'll have some numbers in a sec, which give me kind of great pause and concern for what they do in open play. But set pieces is one place where I think they can excel, and maybe that's hope. So if you are in the stands on Saturday night and a free kick is awarded or a corner kick is awarded, maybe pay a little bit extra special attention during those moments, because you may see a goal scored.
Yeah, and to be clear, we're not recommending betting advice, and you cannot come for us if say something I said, for example, leads you to lose out big on a high margin bet.
Yeah, but, don't bet on MLS.
Yeah, never bet on MLS. Never bet on MLS. That's going to be an interesting thing to look at, is exactly what Josh was telling you to look for. Jorge Alastoe got a call up. I have a feeling he probably sees his second game of play that is allowed in those call-ups. And then interesting creative midfielder off of set pieces. One of the things he's very good at.
If you've got Owen Wolf coming back, do you do that supplemental plus international spot spend on Alastoe to have that depth?
It's an open question. When it comes to the midfield, when I mentioned this previously, people look at those injury return estimates, and I think people get their hopes up looking at the short end of them each time, where it's, Danny Pereira out 4 to 8 weeks, but probably 4, right? Probably 4? Probably 4.
Yeah.
There's a tendency toward that, even though there's no guidance to tend toward. That's just where people tend sometimes.
Have a feeling being notoriously easy to bend.
And I feel like Danny Pereira is out until the World Cup break.
I don't think it's that long, but I do think we don't see him before May.
I don't think we see him before May.
I think there's too many matches in May to not activate him if he's ready, but I don't think it's going to happen at all in April.
I don't think he's going to be ready, because he's messed that up before, and I think abundance of caution is going to come into play, and I'm not going to hold it against the sporting department keeping him out because he just isn't ready to come back in. These guys aren't robots. You can't just stick on a new set of tires. That's where I'm coming from. Is I think we have seen so much injury that the reflex is in wanting to be more optimistic than maybe realistic. I don't think that it's wise to assume the shorter end of a recovery period on any of these guys. And it's nothing against them personally. It's just that that's what recovery from injury is.
And then speaking of Jayden Nelson, as we learned on Thursday, has a back issue, possibly a nerve, which also doesn't seem like something that's going to go away with the snap of the fingers either.
No, and I mean, that's something that it could be that when you get massage therapy, that can be a blessing, and it can also, it is not a mechanical process, and so sometimes it can take multiple layers of work to get where it needs to go, and sometimes it can make it worse unintentionally.
Steven Estacio of LAFC, who got a dead leg colliding with Drew Fisher a few weeks ago and got a massage, and that turned into a hematoma, and now he's out for Canada's camp, and he's out for this match, which bodes a little well for Austin, given that he is a new key midfield piece that they have. Speaking of key midfield pieces that are out, but of course LAFC plenty of talent to make up for that loss.
Plenty of talent, and I would argue that it's nice to have a similar rhythm and similar lineup going, and people lock in really well with each other. And Eustachio being out is something that I think I expect to be more key than I think people are giving it credit for. And it's because these guys get so used to the flow and, to your point, a real key piece in their lineup. I think adapting to a different vibe, subbing in a guy one for one, even if they are similar types of players, doesn't necessarily always go the way that you want it to. I think it's going to be a surprising night. And of course, that extends to, could be a 4-0 LAFC blowout. Totally could be. 1000% could be. I just don't feel it, which is the most scientific I've got for it. And I'm sure is one of the reasons that people are sure that I'm just watching my mailbox for my weekly paycheck from Nico Esteves Inc.
The show's resident optimist is feeling that there's going to be a positive Austin result. Whereas I said that a 2-match losing streak could turn into a 4-match losing streak. Was very, very concerned about not getting a result against RSL. Looked like the team was going to do that. And then the late goal that kind of comes out of nowhere, but also given kind of the field tilt in the second half, given where the momentum was going, that of course happened for RSL and they got the home victory. The most alarming thing to me out of that game, we did see some good signs in the first half. And Nico did talk about difference between first half and second half. But just that the majority of chances were confined to 2 minutes in the first half, at the end of the first half, and then 2 minutes around the hour mark in the second half. And then the team basically didn't generate a whole lot of offense otherwise. And Alice Dewing looked like he belonged, but he didn't look like he was necessarily a game changer, except there was one chance that he engineered and then a rebound fell to him. He didn't make as split-second a decision as he needed to in order to get that shot off, although I do think that in the moment, he was maybe trying to angle for better positioning, a better shot. I don't think that was necessarily something that was negative on his part, but just shows the speed of the game. And again, you've got somebody who is used to playing at MLS Next Pro capacities where 14-year-olds can score, to a much different league where you do have some excellent youngsters, but some excellent youngsters who have really risen through the ranks, like Xavier Gozo, for example, who did really impress me in that match. He's the real deal.
There's something of a cosmic trade that I'm comfortable with from Alastaway not acting on that opportunity. As we've talked about, soccer's a game of mistakes. And I mentioned to you on the night that I feel like without the Svatak own goal, I would have been totally fine with that draw. I would have been totally fine with that draw against RSL.
Draw at RSL is a good result.
Draw at RSL would have been fine. Rather perplexing that, like you said, they kind of just shut down after the 60th minute. And what happened there? Is that a high-performance department that did not adequately prepare them for altitude? Because it looked like they just were drained across the board. They have ways of training in advance of going to altitude to counteract that. And my question is, what the hell happened there? But on Alastaway missing what I think can be fairly considered a very good opportunity to score, I would rather, having seen that young man play and be informed by mistakes that have been made on what's been a really sharp run in MLS Next Pro, I would take him not making that, which would have tied up an RSL game, in favor of him using that as fuel to propel the team to an outright victory against LAFC.
Okay.
This guy does well. This guy does well when he's grumpy about what happened last week. And I think that's something that can make a material difference, especially on home soil for his club. If I had to choose, do we see a draw with RSL or an outright win against LAFC because of the things verging on maybe just one player? Every day, all day, every day, Verde all day. I want to see him grumpy and annoyed at what happened last week against LAFC, because that's something I can see his home debut in the league being better than his MLS debut, which went better for the guy on the RSL side who was MLS debuting and scored a goal on that night. I think there is something to being in front of your home fans for the first time that also makes a difference. But yeah, like I said in advance of last week's match, I would be surprised if we don't see him on the field, quite honestly.
Yeah. I think I grant that too. Yeah. Again, I don't know how much time he gets out there. We'll get into this in a second with the offensive numbers, and they certainly do need some sort of boost in what they're doing creatively. Again, it was puzzling. I know that other podcasts since Saturday's match jumped in on this, but since I asked the question and got the answer, I thought I should bring this up too. Nico saying that they did not go defensive in that match, putting in an extra center back for those last 20 minutes. I don't think that going defensive and doing occasional counters in that situation would have necessarily been bad, but I do feel like that was the attempt. And I do think it's a little disingenuous on Nico's part to say that that was indeed what was not happening, when it very much appeared that it was this kind of idea that by subbing in an extra defensive player that you are not going defensive doesn't necessarily sit right with me.
Well, here the way that I would disagree is that I think it's a semantic thing.
Sure.
Subbing on another defensive player to shore up the defense, I think tactically they needed to shore up the defense. There's a difference between that and playing for the draw. And I don't think they were. I believe him at face value that they were not playing for a draw.
But they should have, probably.
That's the thing is, I think there's a difference between trying to avoid getting scored on and full on bunkering, parking the bus, that sort of thing.
They did put on Ramirez for Heinz Ike, which neither MLS Soccer nor FOTMOB actually officially tracked.
Nope.
It did happen. We did see that sub happen. But again, I feel like that was pretty late to bring him on. If you were going to really go for the win, that you would have needed to bring him on about 15 minutes earlier. And probably bring him on for Zuni again. Zuni kind of continued to not do much in that match. We had 18 touches in that, which again is not the least amount of touches that he's had in a match, but still didn't seem like he was very involved. Seemed like he was pretty disconnected the whole time. That continues to be a concern.
Yeah, I think another thing that the stats don't cover is how well RSL was covering Izuni, which there's only so much that he can be expected to do when he's being covered as well as he was. So if it was him being set up as a false nine and not really being expected to do a lot because they wanted to keep other defenders busy with him rather than paying attention to other stuff, that's another way to play. But there is that thing of, at some point, he's got to show up on a stat sheet of some sort. And regardless of what the intent is from the plan of attack, what is he contributing? It can't just be, well, he's holding up defenders from paying attention to other guys.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If you're paying a DP that much, it can't just be like one belly goal in 4 matches and then a bunch of running around and occupying center backs.
Yeah. And it's nice that the threat from him is what led to that own goal, the second goal that he celebrated, even though he didn't touch it going
Against Charlotte. Yeah.
Yeah, but he used the force on it, Phil. He used a force push on it. And I joke, but I give the guy credit. Like, without the threat he put on the ball, I don't think that Aguimong would have made that mistake.
You don't think that without him there, a young, inexperienced center back would have misplayed a ball?
A young, inexperienced center back was only playing the ball because it was under threat. I mean, plain and simple. If there had been no Austin attacker threatening the ball, he would have just let it, like, chest trapped it, dropped it to his feet, put it back into play. It's an easy punching bag to make using Mirto Izuni, but I think it's important to credit the things that he has done well in this season that, to use your own words, we don't have a lot of data from yet, but we are getting more and more data. And the more data there is, the more there needs to be coming from his end of the field.
Right. And I guess that's a good transition to get into some of the numbers that I unveiled midweek. So after 4 matches, let me just run down the list. So these are per FOTMOB. So 3.9 XG, which is 25th in the league currently. To compare that to Vancouver, who currently leads the league in XG, they have 11.4. Of course, they did just beat Minnesota 6-0 a pretty lopsided match last week. So here's some other numbers. So shots on target per match. So 4.5, that's 19th in the league. Big chances, 5, that's 27th. 3 of those are missed. Accurate passes per match, 288, which sounds like a lot, but that's actually 28th. Accurate long balls per match, 15.3, so that's 29th. Accurate crosses per match, 3.3, that's 22nd. And touches in the opposition box, 61, which is 29th. That is after 4 games. Those are including kind of some unusual games, of course. With Charlotte, they were down a man. With RSL, they were playing at altitude. There was a lot of field tilt going on in that match in particular. But that's worrisome. A lot of this is attributable to Owen Wolf is not in the mix. Torres is playing a new role. Rosales is playing a new role. And I think that that's all contributing. And of course, if you put Vasquez in the mix, I think that those touches go up. And I think those big chances go up as well because he's a target who can engineer those sorts of things. So part of this is just endemic, the early injury woes that they have. But it's still pretty concerning because, again, I feel like even if these numbers do improve and people get back, I think by April, we're still looking at a team that is bottom third in a lot of those categories, like 21st through 30th. I will run those numbers again around that time just to see if things have improved. But my concern is that it's just not going to improve appreciably. And it's going to be the same story as last year, despite what we've heard about the preseason about trying to be more offensive, where it's basically score when you can, hang on, let Brad Stuber bail you out, and get to a low playoff seed.
I'll stand by what I've said previously, which is let's see where things are at the World Cup break. Let's see where they are there. They certainly don't look terribly optimistic at the moment. I think giving this team the opportunity that the LAFC match represents, I think the entire first half of the season hinges on tonight. No pressure.
Okay.
No pressure, guys. No
That's
pressure. This is the opportunity to turn around the narrative or slide into the narrative like a Venezuelan baseball player.
I'd work that in.
Well, actually, I think that's a bad metaphor because that slide from that Venezuelan player into second base, that's what ended up leading into catapulting them to victory in the World Baseball Classic. So maybe, rather than slide into defeat, sliding into a turnaround is what Austin needs. So they should want to slide like a Venezuelan baseball player because it could come down to just decisively one play that is what tonight's game turns on. LAFC is no slouch. In no way am I calling them deficient. I think they represent a good opportunity for, I believe, an underrated team to show what they're really capable of. And that's what they've been looking for, is something that is not a situation where they can go, oh, this one injury, or oh, this one thing that didn't go our way, or oh, this unexpected own goal. Tonight's the night.
Yeah, and I really do wonder with Nico, like kind of strategically, is he still going to insist on trying to be offensive and expansive, even though the numbers haven't done that? Or is this going to be a defend for your lives, get something on a set piece, and squeak out of there with a 1-0 win? That to me seems kind of the most prudent, practical way to do this. And I don't necessarily mind prudent and practical as long as they're results. It does make it harder to write stories when there's not much going on, and then all of a sudden there's a late set piece, which could very well be the case tonight. But I do feel like that's probably more of the success. I think if you try to match LAFC in a horse race, that's not going to work out terribly well for you.
Phil West requests more goals, folks. Breaking news. I think there's something to, if Austin can put one up against LAFC, I think that'll be a solid shock to their system on its own. And it will be a better thing for momentum. It will end up making it so that they have something to scatter LAFC's brains on. Because I don't think LAFC is going to necessarily assume that Austin's going to score on them. I think they're going into this game look at the stats. Stats don't lie. I don't think that they are expecting that will happen in some combination.
Yeah. And again, if Austin does score in LAFC, it will be, again, reminding you, the first goal that they've given up this regular season. And maybe that's a shock. So not just, oh, we got scored on by Austin, but, oh, we finally got scored on after keeping the string. And maybe that is something that is affecting their psyches. I feel like they're going to be well coached on that point. And again, we saw that in CCC when they went down early in that second leg. Midweek, they came back. They were eventually able to pull out that series. They didn't let that phase them necessarily, which is something that Josh had made a point of in his preview article leading up to this. But again, yeah, in the league, it might be a little bit different. CCC, especially when you're away, it's kind of weird. You don't necessarily feel maybe necessarily the same pressures that you would in MLS, just because it is unfamiliar and, to use an obvious word here, foreign, right? So if you are playing somewhere where the eyes are maybe not on you in the way that they are week after week in MLS, maybe you're a little bit more freer to act, whereas people know that this streak is happening. And this will be certainly, I think, a topic of conversation going into that match. The kind of idea of how long can they keep this streak going?
The thing that Josh said in that foreign exchange article that I keyed in on was the continuity between Cherundolo and Dos Santos.
Mm-hmm.
People have just universally looked at, oh, well, they're in the exact same form. They're the exact same team that Austin beat last year. Plus Son Heung-min. Okay. To be fair, plus Son Heung-min.
True. Yeah. Pre-set and post-set, a little bit of a difference between these teams.
But I'll say that sometimes that consistency isn't necessarily the bulletproof advantage that people expect it to be. Nico has been a very good coach v coach manager. Look at last season against Mikey Varas the first time. He does a pretty solid job of upsetting the balance of expectations when the other team is on a heater, on a really solid run of form. He has performed well as a coach. Guy deserves credit for that. So when something semi-miraculous, according to many quarters, happens tonight, just remember who said that it was possible. That's all.
The show's optimist. Any more optimism that we need to heap on the people before? Again, we do have an international break. I'll be writing about this as well, coming up to Thursday's matches. But simultaneously on Thursday afternoon, you're going to have Ukraine and Sweden. You're going to have Poland and Albania. And again, we haven't seen officially an Izuni call up yet, but
oh yes, we have actually. Just
we have. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, broke when?
This morning.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so Izuni is called up.
Okay.
So does Fatak or does Izuni go to the World Cup, or do neither of them go to the World Cup? That's all going to get decided here over this international break, which is pretty compelling, pretty exciting. So
yeah, big time.
Again, I don't know if you have rooting interest necessarily for one versus the other. In terms of just confidence, sellability, I think Albania going to the World Cup is kind of the best case scenario in that, just to get Izuni that kind of competition and to get him on the world stage, whether you are rooting for him to succeed or rooting for him to move on. But again, I do think that this may tip more towards Sweden and Poland. We may be disappointed in what happens on Thursday, that they don't even get the opportunity to, in the other match, to settle and decide who's going to go to the World Cup. They might not be factors in this at all, but we will find that out Thursday, and very curious to see how that unfolds.
Yeah, for the narrative, having Izuni and Svatok have to go through each other to determine whose team goes to the World Cup, that makes those games more interesting to watch for me. And to your point, I think that especially, I think there's a fair amount of people in the fan base who would like for the prospect of Izuni getting transferred to be as positive and rosy a situation for Austin FC as possible. And when you have somebody playing a World Cup and maybe they have a good World Cup, that makes it a lot easier to find a lucrative landing for that player. I feel like long-term, Austin FC is very dedicated to the Brandon Vasquez project, less so, I think, the Mirto Izuni project. And I think last season, even though he had bright spots, I think him not performing as expected, as desired, is something that has them wanting to find the best long-term solution. And I'll stand by. I don't think selling him at a loss just to get him off the roster would have necessarily improved things. May not be fun, may not be exciting soccer to have a high-paid DP that is mostly holding up defenders and not actually doing a lot in the attack and making opportunities possible for other players. at the very least, that's better than the alternative of having another big hole in a senior roster spot. In this case, not due to injury, but just due to the player not being there. I feel like if the money had been there and there had been more time to figure it out, I feel like that Turkish club rumor probably would have panned out and they would have taken that deal. And I think it's a matter of the right deal coming. And you want to be selling a World Cup qualifying piece rather than not a World Cup qualifying piece.
True. Although I do really want to see Svatak up against Dazuni.
Big time.
In a match to go to the World Cup.
Big time. Big time. Go big or go home.
And I kind of feel like Svatak wins that matchup.
Svatak game-winning header past Uzuni would be crazy, but totally possible.
Well, hopefully they have taller players on Albania that would match up against Svatak in that situation, but who knows? The way those things work, yeah. But I would be curious to just see Austin FC player against Austin FC player in that scenario, particularly on Albania's offensive end, to see like what Uzuni is able to engineer, knowing Svatak's tendencies and vice versa.
We will see next week.
Yeah. So international break coming up. So I guess we will probably delve into a tangent rather than a regular. Okay. So, or maybe both. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see.
We have a little bit of time before Miami-Geddon happens.
Right. But we have to do some
doesn't
research.
Look ready, Phil. That stadium doesn't look ready.
And I put in for credentials.
So we'll see.
Not noticed yet on that. So
they may still be building their press box. Who knows?
I do have a flight. I do that. I have. Right. So, and trying to stay close to the new stadium. Although, will I be traveling out to the former Lockhart Stadium instead to see not a stadium opening that is epic and historic?
Yeah, one way or another, I think you'll make it in there. It'll happen. I believe in you, Phil. I believe that you will win.
Even if I'm smuggled in. Right.
Indeed. This is the best thing I've heard in the history of the 8 years I've been on this planet.